And good afternoon, everyone. This is Jason Horsch coming to you live from Xanadu Gallery, and I'm here for another broadcast with Barney Davy. Barney, how are you doing?
Hey, Jason, good to see you as always, and hi to everyone listening in.
It's good to be here. And as we mentioned in our last broadcast, we decided to make this an open Q&A session. Ask us anything you want. We try to do these from time to time, about every 6 months or so. We get one of these in. It's your opportunity to take a little bit of control of the questions, the conversation, and direct a little bit of the interaction that we have. And we're going to try a couple of different things. We've got the live Q&A going, which you should see, if you're watching this video now, you should see a Q&A link in the upper right, or, I mean, who knows? It seems like it appears in different places every time you pull up a YouTube. But you should see a Q&A button, and if you click on that, it'll open a window on the right of your screen that allows you to enter questions, to see questions that other people have asked, and enter your own. You can also email questions to me directly at jason@xanadugallery.com. And if you do that, please just be sure and in the subject line include the words "Ask Us Anything" or broadcast question or something like that, so that I know that it's a question for this session. And we're going to try, we've got a lot of questions already. We're going to try and get to as many of the different topics as we can. We've only got an hour here, so I'm sure we won't be able to get to everything, but try and get to as many as we can. And then on our Google Plus page, there's a place to have conversation, and you can ask additional questions there, and maybe if we can't get to some of the questions, you can answer each other's questions in the comments section there. So let's dive in. Did you have anything you wanted to mention as we get started, Barney?
No, let's just have at it. I'm raring to go. I hope we get some good questions. I've seen that there's already some up there, so.
Yeah, and so let's just start. I'm going to start with a question that I got from Jason. He sent it via email, and his question was, what should you do with old paintings that you just can't sell? I've heard fire sales are a bad idea for artists. Should old paintings be donated or destroyed? I have limited storage space and need to keep it clean. Stream, he said. I'm assuming that means to try and keep it with the least amount of clutter possible.
Right.
And I think that that raises, it kind of opens a couple of cans of worms, in a sense, with the question of older work. And the first thing I would say is that sometimes you have to be a little bit careful. Sometimes you feel like, oh, this is older work, I've already shown it in a few shows, or it's been in a few galleries and it hasn't sold, it's worthless and I want to get rid of it. And sometimes it just didn't sell because it didn't happen to be in the right place at the right time. And if you can look at that work, or better yet, have somebody who has a little bit more of an objective eye than you do take a look at it, and if the quality of the work is good and the subject matter is good, and it's up to your current standards of work, I wouldn't necessarily feel like you've got to get rid of it. I would look for more opportunities to try and show it. Now, if you do come to a point where you've just said, okay, I've shown it in every possible location that I can think of, I would avoid this concept of the fire sale. I'm having my year-end studio clearance, burn everything down, get it out of the studio kind of sale. I know some artists who do that, and it may even generate some sales, but I'm concerned that it sets a precedent for your clients. It trains them that, well, why should I buy something new when I can just wait and buy something at a lower price? And it has a tendency to devalue all of your work by doing that.
No argument with me on that. There are creative other things you can do. One would be donate it at its full price to wherever you can and take the tax deduction from it. Another would be look at it and say, why isn't this selling? Is there something about it? Are the colors really kind of, from a generation ago? Is the framing, if you're selling it with framing, dated, or is it frame? Is there something about it that you could change? It wouldn't be huge investment, maybe you overpainted a little bit and put it back out there. Or just there are creative ways to do it. I agree with you, Jason. Fire sales or bargain sales, just bad news. You're gonna get the roughly the same value by donating it as you would if you put it out there at some bargain rate, and that way it goes out in the world. You've done something good for some other organization and gotten yourself a tax deduction from it as well.
And you will want to talk to your accountant before you jump into that. And many of you already know this, that there are some issues around those donations. And I've actually signed on to a petition that currently the way the tax code is written, you should technically, according to the IRS, you only get a deduction for the materials that you've put into the creation of that piece of artwork. Again, talk to your accountant. That makes it a little bit less valuable to have done that, and it's ridiculous that that's the case, because if you're in any other business and creating a product and donated it, you'd get to take a full deduction. But that doesn't that doesn't diminish. I know a lot of artists who make donations. You'd want to make sure that the quality is good so that it's not damaging your brand in any way. But you can do some good for the community, and maybe it helps an organization that you believe in raise some funds or beautify their office space. And I wouldn't discount the value of building better relationships with distant family members by giving it to them as a holiday gift or something like that. There are lots of opportunities to leverage artwork that way as well.
Good question, though.
It is a good question.
You want to take another one there?
If you've got one.
This one caught my eye when showing a portfolio to a gallery owner. Is it usual to show one's CV, curriculum vitae, / resume at the same time? Thanks. Is that from Ted Hayward? The names are at the bottom, right?
Yep, from Ted, exactly.
Jason's more qualified to answer that than me. I would just go. Yes.
And I've done a broadcast previously on portfolio formatting and have a blog post about it. But the answer is, if you've got a good one, yes, show it. Include it. The most important thing as a gallery owner, when I'm looking at an artist's portfolio, and maybe meeting with an artist for the first time, it's the imagery that's most important to me. Do I like the artwork? Is this artwork that I feel excited about? And truthfully, if the answer to that question is no, then nothing you can say in your biography or CV or resume is going to make one bit of difference to me. And the converse is true as well. If I'm excited about what I'm seeing there, a lack of a resume or CV or biography is probably not going to be a deal breaker. So the imagery, the artwork is absolutely the most important. And I have certainly taken on artists, agreed to represent them in the past without ever having seen their resume or biography. It's becomes more of a tool for me in my marketing efforts than it is really in helping me make a decision. So Ted, the answer to Ted's question is yes, you can include it there, you can show it there, but if you don't have a great, maybe you're new in the business, or maybe you don't have a lot of experience or representation or awards, you can feel free at that point. If your resume is embarrassingly light in detail, you can feel free to omit it from the portfolio.
The work stands on its own and when they come into your gallery to begin with, then. Sounds like to me.
Exactly.
You got another one there you want to go for?
Okay, let's... and I'm assuming this came from someone via email because it says it's from me, and I don't remember asking this question. But the question was, if an artist is considering lowering their price to increase sales, is there any graceful way to do that? Do you have any thoughts on that one, Barney? I'll throw it to you first.
Graceful? Maybe not. Thoughtful, yes. If you're going to lower your prices, and it happens, and certainly a lot of artists between 2008 and maybe just recently have had that experience where they needed to sell work and they lowered their price. These questions always around pricing, Jason, you and I come back to the same thing, I think, and that is you need to be consistent. You need to not try to upset one market by doing something in another market. And if you're going to lower the price, you probably need to think about how do you do that just without announcing it, maybe, but just lightly, or one day your prices are a little lower. I can't see making an announcement about it being a good thing to do. You may have some different thoughts about it, but
No,
I would
I
probably
think in
do it rather
essence,
sort of stealthily.
yeah, I think that's right. And again, first, I would say that you want to be a little bit careful. I think sometimes an artist will think, well, my artwork isn't selling enough, so if I lower my prices, I can increase my sales. And sometimes pricing wasn't even the issue to start with. Maybe it was that you're not getting the right kind of exposure, you're not in the right place. I would rather see you put your efforts into increasing your exposure and increasing your promotion of your work, and see if you can move the needle that way. Barney's right that during the last several years, 2008 and beyond, that there was the whole market softened and the economy was hard, and many artists lowered their prices. But that was because you could point to the fact that, look, everybody can understand what's going on, and collectors, I found, weren't concerned. They understood, they knew just as well as anyone else what was going on, and so there was really no issue with the lowering of prices. So I don't think, I would say to you that from my perspective, from where I'm sitting, we've just had an excellent season the last 5-6 months. Sales have been very strong. The market seems to be coming back and coming back pretty strongly this season, which would lead me to say to you, are you sure that pricing is the issue? Maybe it is indeed that you just need to get some other exposure or increase your representation.
Final note on that, maybe just you're a marketing partner when you're a gallery owner and you've got someone in your gallery, and if you're in that situation and where you have representation through galleries or others, then it probably be a very good idea to talk to them and discuss it, because it could be the advice that Jason just gave you is spot on, that we don't think we're trying to fix the wrong thing here. You might hear that advice, you might not, but getting some interested party second opinion on it would be a very good thing to do before you just take out the knife and start slashing your prices without knowing if that's really the issue.
There's and kind of just, I think that's a good segue into this next question. I'm pulling this one off our Google Plus page for the event, and it comes from Lori Woodward, who both Barney and I know very well. But Lori asks, I'm wondering whether to try and get back into a gallery, or mark up my own work and sell on my own. That said, I'm finding it difficult to gain gallery representation. Used to be much easier, and I've worked with several galleries in the past. I'm wondering what the future of the commercial galleries is, and if perhaps I'm better off selling on my own at a crossroads right now. Boy, I think she's just asked the million-dollar question. Wouldn't we all like to know the future of the gallery business, the whole art industry? And I think, Barney, you and I are probably going to have, I don't think, different answers to this question. I think we're both going to have kind of the same direction to our answers. But my response is yes, kind of both. That it makes sense to try and continue to build relationships with galleries, but it also makes sense to be putting some real effort into building your own collector base as well.
Yeah, the subtitle of my Guerrilla Marketing for Artists book is How 100 Collectors Can Bulletproof Your Career, and I base that premise on the fact that if you if you're the typical artist, and I don't know what typical means, but it's been said, and I'll buy into it, that an artist can make about 1,000 originals in a lifetime if they crank out 33 a year over a 30-year career. They've made 1,000 pieces. That number will, your mileage will vary, obviously, but with that contention, I say if you can get 100 collectors buying your work, and you're in that 1,000 range, they're probably going to buy anywhere from 200 to 400 of your pieces. That's a nice chunk of your total life's work sold to people that you know. So was that good advice in the past? No. Galleries weren't really fond of it. They're probably not greatly fond of it now, but they understand you've got to make a living and they can't stop you from trying to do that. And the other thing is that the tools are there for you to market directly to collectors now with email, blogging, social media, and so forth. And then finally, I believe that collectors, because of the internet, have the ability to do their own research and are more comfortable than any time in the past in terms of being able to buy directly from artists. So all these things come together at a time where I believe that it's really a great idea, if not just incumbent on artists to build collectors. And I also go forth and say in the book, and this is where you and I coincide and agree, Jason, that it's not the be-all, the end-all. You're not going to, most artists aren't going to make a full career out of just selling direct. So you need other distribution points, and galleries are maybe not exactly what they once were, and the future is a little shaky on where it's all going, but that's true for almost everything. So I would definitely not shut out galleries. I'm sure you're having some struggles with it, Lori. Given the talent that you have, I'm kind of surprised. I'd keep banging on doors, maybe reread Jason's book, and Starving to Successful Fine Artist Guide to Getting into Galleries, and see if there aren't some.
And by the way, folks, I did not pay him to just say that. So
send your commissions later, Jason.
Yes, I will.
No, it's a great book. If you haven't read it, it's you know, it's that is the be all to end all. And there's great advice in there. And you know, I go back and read my book or Jason's book or other books that I've read in the past and go, wow, I said that, or hey, that's actually pretty good advice. So maybe you just need to you know, revamp what you're doing a little bit and be persistent, Lori. And if the old haunts that were picking you up before aren't, look for some new ones. But at the same time, sharpen up, you know, start building that list, that email list and that potential prospect list, and start marketing to them directly. Kind of get those twin lines going out there of distribution. And don't give up hope. It's you know, success for you and a lot of others is just right around the corner.
Well, and you know, we could take the kind of the underlying question there, the future of galleries question, and that could be a whole broadcast in and of itself. And you know, I'll just mention a couple of things. And I'm sure every business says this, right? I'm sure that all the bookstore owners before Amazon came along said, you know, the internet will never take over the book buying business because people want to be in the store, they want to browse through the books, they want to smell the paper, they want the suggestions of the staff. And boy, you look around and there are not a lot of booksellers around anymore. Yes, there are some niche, and actually some of those niche sellers are doing quite well. We have the Poison Pen just down the street from us, mystery books is kind of their focus, and they, you know, they do a very good business. But you know, I would just say for the future of the gallery business that we still, to a large extent, the art buying process is very much about the experience, and galleries are still an important part of people's experience. You know, a lot of our buyers are travelers or travel specifically to collect art. And so the galleries will, I believe, will stay somewhat relevant, although there's going to be a lot of turnover and a lot of galleries that don't survive the transition to the online world. But as Barney said, it makes sense to take advantage of the same tools that the galleries are using, and that the big art sellers that are trying to move some business online are using, and try and incorporate those into your own practices to expand your reach.
Just want to add one last note on the Amazon thing. It might have been booksellers at first that poo-pooed the idea of, and then watched as they were steamrolled by Amazon. Now it's virtually every business. Your local grocery store, Walmart has experimented with having shoppers in the store deliver. Hey, you live in the same zip code, you live within a few miles of this, we'll pay you $10 to drop this off. Because Amazon's coming with, same day delivery. It's already here in Phoenix and other markets, so they're upsetting everybody's apple cart. And
yeah, and certainly with the last year, the launch of Amazon Art, which I've been watching with interest.
Sure.
They're certainly reaching into this market as well. Now it's interesting because they're creating a partnership with galleries, and we've talked about that before. The dichotomy of that. Help us put you out of business.
Yeah, right.
Is kind of what they're doing. But we've been contemplating throwing our hat into that ring too, and instead of looking at it as a business killer, it's potentially for galleries just another avenue, and potential for the artists that are showing in those galleries another avenue of potential sales.
You have to look at it like that. I use the word distribution channels a lot in the webinars in my book, and I think artists need to think of their business model that way. You need to sometimes step back from the fact that you're making art and look at saying, okay, hey, I'm actually in business here. I'm running a small business, and as such, I make product. It's art. I agree that some artists cringe at the thought of product, but if you just take that emotional creative part out and think about it, I've got a business here to run. How am I getting the thing that I sell, which in your case is art, sold? Well, you have to have distribution channels. It's direct, galleries, online, affiliate marketing, all kinds of different ways that you need to think about it. And what Jason just described is how he, as a gallery owner, may do there's a word called co-opetition, where you cooperate on one point and you compete on another. Artists who sell direct and then also work with galleries have a co-opetition kind of arrangement with those galleries, and just putting your head in the sand and trying to ignore those things is probably a prescription for failure, or having your apple cart overturned on you.
Well, and it probably will surprise viewers to hear me say this, but Barney's exactly right. There is some competition that is occurring because the artists that I'm working with are selling directly. I mean, I deal with quite frequently the possibility that a collector is going to come into my gallery, see the work, and then decide, yeah, you know what, I'm going to contact the artist directly, and I won't be involved in that sale. And many galleries, because of that exact possibility, have almost gone nuclear on their artists and said you can't show online, you can't be contactable in any way. But what they're ignoring is that the reverse is also true, that an artist who's built a base of collectors and is working directly with those buyers is also going to be bringing business to me when we have a show and those collectors are invited to the opening. They're going to be buying from me, and I would never have had contact with them otherwise. So we've probably spent enough time beating that one, but the response is that we can't really predict with any exactitude the future, so let's just work like crazy with every avenue that we have available to us now and make what we have work.
Organize, prioritize.
Yeah, I've got a question from email. This one's from Diane F. She's from Arizona, and her question is, if an artist does not know if a piece of their art is archival due to process or materials they have used or not used, there's some brain twisting complications for me. Do they have any obligation to inform potential customers of that possibility? And I guess my first response to that is that transparency with your collectors is always a good idea, and I would just think about the angle that I'm approaching that from. I want to give my collectors all the information I can, But rather than saying, now listen, this piece of art that I've created, there's a possibility that it's going to fall apart a few years from now. That, you know, I did or didn't use this, and there's a good chance that you're going to come in and it's just going to have disintegrated into nothingness. That's probably not going to be a great sales approach for you. And so instead, I might suggest taking it as, you know, instead of a potential, you know, a potential problem with your artwork, talk about the benefit. I'm doing something that's a little bit experimental. No other artist has done it before. Let me tell you about the techniques that I'm using and educate them through that process. And you know, if they ask the question, well, what's the future of this medium or this process? You can let them know, well, you're going to be a part of finding out the answer to that question, but I stand behind my artwork, and if there are ever any problems with it, you can just get back in touch with me, and we'll take care of those problems. But obviously, hopefully, Diane, you're looking for ways and media. You know, your goal is to have a piece of artwork that's going to withstand the test of time, and you're working towards making that happen with whatever your process is, and then that you're willing to stand behind that process and you know, guarantee the satisfaction of your customers. Always a good policy.
Well said. My first thought with reading that question is, why don't you know if it's archival or not? You made it. If you don't know, you can find out. If you use some kind of Epson inks, Epson will tell you whether they're archival or not. If you used copy paper, not saying you did, but if you can find out what there's no reason why you shouldn't know whether something's archival or not. And if the inks aren't color fast, or the substrate is not made with the conservation in mind, you might want to let the person know that they need to handle it with in a way that's conservative. Keep it. The most damaging thing in most cases is sunlight. This is a piece that was made with certain materials that will cause it to potentially not hold up as well if you keep it in any kind of direct sunlight. So maybe you give them the caution, but find out first, and then if you are using things that are archival or not archival, definitely stop that. It's, you know, just not a good idea. I'll lay one last thing in there. I own a piece. I own a Maxfield Parrish print in the original frame that was my grandfather's or grandparents. That must be from the 1920s. And it's got, you know, the cardboard backing with rusty nails holding them in, or staples holding it in, and it's under glass. It's beautiful. It's the Daybreak one, and you know, it's one of my prized possessions. I've been fearful of taking it even to a gallery, taking it to a conservationist and taking it apart, that I might be damaging the quality. But frankly, when I look at it, I don't see that, you know, now nearly 120 years later, or 100 years later, that the art is really significantly deteriorated. And that was a print that was definitely not made with any archival materials, or the word archival and art probably they weren't used in the same sentence at all 100 years ago. So I think there's a little bit overblown with it, but just be careful, give a caution. It's not archival. You need to keep it out of the light. And now you've given your you've forewarned, if they keep it in the light, you may have to deal with it afterwards, however you feel it's necessary, depending on who the collector is and what your personal feelings and possibly stated policies about such things.
And again, the way to kind of couch that, you know, when the piece is being sold, rather than making it sound too negative, you know, if it's in the sunlight, I would just kind of phrase it more along the lines of, well, most artwork, when placed in sunlight, will have issues. And so, like most other media, this potentially could be damaged by direct sunlight. So please work to limit the total exposure to direct sunlight. You know, yes, we want to be honest, but at the same time, we want we want to be diplomatic in how we're speaking to a client, and we want to spin any downside into to negate that potential issue for a collector who's trying to make a decision. You know, collectors are skittish in the first place when it comes to buying artwork, and so we don't want to give them any excuses for not ultimately making that purchase.
Agreed. Are you
Got
going
a
with the
question
Sergio
from
question there?
Sergio here, pricing question, and again, this is a topic that we've covered in some depth. We did a full broadcast on pricing last summer, but it's also obviously a very pressing question for many artists, and it's not surprising a number of the questions that we've received for this broadcast were around pricing. So Sergio's question is, pricing for different markets. What do you do when one gallery wants you to start with lower prices and another wants you to raise your prices? And I think someone else asked the question, you know, an online gallery wants them apparently to have lower prices. Well, and this is a tough one, because this, kind of going back to Lori's question, this really has the potential to create some problems with your various distribution channels. If one particular channel is demanding a lower sales price, it is going to undercut the other venues where you're selling your work, galleries, or if you're participating in shows. And the world is so small now, it's as easy as pulling out your phone and typing someone's name in, and you'll have access to all of the different venues where they're selling their work. So I would be very hesitant to have any kind of inconsistency in my pricing. And I would explain that to someone who's demanding that I lower my prices, you know, and try to understand a little bit better what their thinking is behind that. Do they feel that your prices are too high? And if that's the case, maybe you need to explore lowering your prices across all of your channels. Or is it that they're just looking for some kind of pricing advantage in selling your work? And in that case, you're really going to have to weigh the benefit. You know, are they going to sell enough work to make it worth the cost of potentially having to lower your prices or creating instability in your pricing market?
I would be suspect of the gallery or the channel that wants to lower your prices and challenge them as to why. If my art is selling well in other venues and other channels at this price, why are you asking me, what's your problem? Why are you asking me to lower the price? If it's a discount art gallery, online art gallery, maybe you don't want to be in there at all. I always try to get to the underlying reason, and that might take asking multiple questions, asking the same question in different ways many times over until you get through the veil of what somebody is telling you to the point of why they're doing it. There has to be a reason why they're doing it. If it doesn't sit well with you, then get out of there. You know, they very well may not be doing you any favors. They might have legitimate reasons. I'm not saying they don't, but I'm always suspect of something like that. I would make them square up and give you a solid, believable answer. If they can't come up with one, that's a strong indication you don't need to be in that market.
Let's take, while we're on the question of pricing, this question comes from Jan Howden-Paul. Just recently started to price my artwork by adding the height plus the width, then multiply total by a percentage to come up with a consistent price. So this is a little different than how many of my artists price. Most of my artists are pricing by the square inch. Jan's using a linear inch pricing, which some people swear by one, some people swear by the other, but the reality is that if you're consistent, you know, each has its benefits. But the question that Jan's asking is, do you agree that that's a good way to come up with a consistent price? And if so, should measurement be with the frame or the original with added price? So this is another common question that comes up on framing and how to price your work appropriately with measurements. And the industry standard is to price based on the size of the image itself, whether it's a painting or watercolor, pastel, photograph.
You mean a sculpture?
Yeah, sculpture. Although you won't be dealing with framing with sculpture, but still, the concept is the same. That your base price should be without any framing size built into it. And I would just suggest then that your formula that you come up with for the pricing needs to incorporate the framing cost into it. In other words, don't add the framing on top. Instead, make sure that the formula that you create allows you enough latitude in your pricing to cover the cost of all your materials, including your framing. And I say that, some artists will say, well, some of my frames are more expensive than others. Some are significantly more ornate, and my first response to that is, well, we may have a consistency problem there. Then, I suggest that you want consistency in subject matter, you want consistency in style, you want consistency in pricing, and you want consistency in presentation. And so, if your framing is all over the place and causing some problems, that would be the first issue. But then, even if you're using consistent frames, but for some unknown reason, a particular size or whatever has a much higher framing price, I would base all of my pricing formula on that highest price that you're paying for the frames. And then basically your profit margin is going to go down a little bit on those pieces, but up on the others. So your pricing formula should be as simple as possible, and it should cover all of your costs and leave room for profit.
I really can't add to that. I think you hit the nail completely on the head there, using the word consistency many times over, which is the byword there. Just be consistent, have a formula that works for you, and stick with that. Don't jump from one formula to the next, because it's going to be confusing to you, to your galleries, and make your life more difficult than it needs to be.
This question comes from Libby. This one comes by email, and her question is, and she thinks this is going to be a troubling question for us, Barney, so steel yourself up. How do you continue to advance your art career when you find yourself moving in a radically different direction artistically from your current style of work? And my other frustration is, how do I get rid of or how do I get these other pieces sold? I have 35 pieces in storage and nothing is sold in over 3 years. My work is juried into shows and has been selected for solo exhibitions. But even though it's favorably received and often complimented, no one is buying the work, and I'm not sure why. I've looked at my marketing, pricing, expanded exposure into non-local regions, and offered reproductions as another level of price points. How would you mentor someone through that? Well, boy, there's a can of worms. So I'm going to give it to you, Barney.
I'll just say IDK. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
just kidding, but yeah, you're right. That's a lot of questions at once to begin with. It's unusual that you would have that many.
And I want to say that first, I think we should say to Libby that she's not at all alone in this, in kind of feeling frustrated. I think a lot of artists get to that point where they feel like, boy, it's been a while since I've had any good sales. I'm not excited about what I'm doing anymore. I'm thinking about changing direction. But then that opens up a whole host of potential problems. And I hear this quite frequently from artists.
Yeah, you wonder how that happened. If you can go back and kind of deconstruct, did you get some good warm fuzzies about a certain style that you came out with, and maybe had a sale or two from it, and then just took off on a flurry and made a whole bunch more similar that maybe isn't quite as good or quite as compelling, or that you were on the tail end of something where whatever was bubbling up as really compelling at the moment has cooled off. If you investigate it a little further, there may be some clues in there for you. There isn't an easy answer to jumping off of one style or look into another. The segue is, I don't see how you can get to the point where that's going to be smooth, but you probably it's like starting over to some extent, and but with experience. So it might just be that you're starting over. You're looking for a whole new type of collector, maybe different galleries, and as far as the other stuff, I wouldn't necessarily abandon it. But if it's been 3 years and you haven't sold any pieces, um, maybe it is time to going
Yeah, I
back to
mean,
the
in
original question.
essence, 3 years, in essence, what you're saying, Libby, is that you really are starting over, because it's not as if you're coming from, if you were saying, boy, I'm selling this older style like crazy, and it's really, I've got a good business going, but I'm just tired of it, and I want to shift gears and do something different. That would present a whole other set of problems. But saying I haven't had any sales for a while, I don't see anything that prevents you from moving to the new style. Then you're not going to alienate your past collectors because they're not there. We've already lost them. Um, I think Barney's right. If you're excited about the new style and you want to build some business around that, take the principles that we've been talking about, and just start over from scratch. It can be a kind of a renewal or a resurrection of your career, and go out and start pushing the new work forward and see what the reaction is to that.
I would ask you to also, you didn't explain how you mentioned selling or marketing, but how many times did the art actually get in front of the best potential buyers? Were you getting to the point where your art was seen and exposed by buyers who had the potential to buy it? And then what venue was that in? Was it a venue where you were also the artist and the salesperson, or was it somebody else? If it were you and the artist and the salesperson, look at your selling skills. If you just present and don't ask people to buy, they won't buy. Jason will tell you, now here's another plug for you, How to Sell Art, a book he wrote. Art doesn't necessarily just sell itself. People don't just walk in and fall in love with something and whip their credit card out. They need some education. They need to be nudged to the point of, do you have any objections, by asking open-ended questions, and then ask to buy. If you didn't execute around getting the art sold when you had the opportunity, then you might have been missing that might be part of the missing equation there. So did you give yourself enough exposure, and when you had the exposure, was real selling were real selling skills applied to the situation?
Let's take a question from Sherry Egger, and her question is, what size work sells best in the market recently? In other words, are there some trends in terms of sizes? And I'm always a little hesitant to talk too much about trends, because trends tend to be that's the definition of a trend. It tends to be ephemeral, and anything that we can say today about a trend may not be true tomorrow. And so you want to be a little bit careful, especially if you're trying to build a long-term career. You don't want to be constantly blowing every which way with trends as they come and go. But now I'm going to go right against that and go ahead and tell you what I found with sizes recently. We've had a lot of success, and you're also going to see that this varies from market to market. But in our market, we've been selling very well what I would kind of call mid-size pieces, and so you might call them sofa sizes, 36 by 48, 30 by 40. The pieces that are behind me on the wall here would be good examples of those kind of sizes. But I've also noticed a big trend of late that we're selling a lot of square images. So 48 squares, 36, 30-30, 40-40, 18-18. There's something in the market right now that is pulling people toward that square imagery, and sometimes they're buying multiple pieces and placing them in interesting ways. But if I were to note any kind of trend there, it's that. I would also encourage, I notice in my interaction with artists, I see a lot of artists who are constraining themselves to pretty small sizes, 16 by 20s, 12 by or 11 by 14s, those kind of standard sizes. And I am
Hangout
always
or
pushing artists to try and move up in size to include some larger pieces in their repertoire, in their portfolio.
trends are a good thing to note. I would be more concerned um, whether the content, instead of trying to paint oh, I'm going to take a square palette, I'm going to take a square canvas and paint on it because I think squares are selling. No, don't do that. Look at what am I trying to create, and then make art that goes in the space that it's supposed to go in. If that's coming out of your own creativity, that's not you responding to some potential market trend. And when you get that fully with your collectors and they see it, they won't care whether it's square or rectangular or linear or whatever. If it's compelling, they're going to buy it. And if you're painting more in the mindset of I'm doing this because I think it's going to give me more sales, you're probably taking yourself off pace a little bit of what you should be doing, which is I'm making the best art at the best art I can make, and it doesn't have anything to do with I'm not concerned with the size.
Yeah, if anything, if you're kind of exploring sizes, my other recommendation is to, if it works, as Barney was saying, obviously it is the imagery, and you want to get a size that aesthetically works with that imagery. But if you can also experiment, do a variety of sizes and see which ones seem to work best for you. And it's a good idea to have a portfolio that has some variety in sizes so that as you present the work to collectors or to galleries, you've got a range of work that they can select from, and that broadens your market a little bit. I've got one for you now, Barney. This one's going to go to your excellent book, the print market book, and that is how would you price high quality open edition digital prints, print on demand? I heard two to four times cost. Do you agree? Costs include printing, driving prints to the fulfillment house, and marketing.
It's a good question. My smart aleck answer would be you want to price them to make money on them, but actually I've had artists who have written to me or made comments on my blog, or I've seen comments on forums where they're complaining about, the greedy printers are taking all the profit, and which is absurd to me. No, you're just selling your art too cheaply, and if your art is you're afraid to raise your price on your prints because your originals aren't selling, then you're not selling your originals at the highest, at the right price. And if you don't think you can get enough money for your originals, then you need to, change your fishing hole and go find people who will pay higher prices for your art, and quit getting this all backwards. But the 2 to 4 times cost is right in kind of in the sweet spot. But as far as including the printing and the marketing and so forth, I wouldn't. That's getting it too complex. We were talking about a formula earlier where Jason said most of his artists use the square inch, and I like that. So if you can get 4 times the cost, that's great. And if that puts you in a consistent price range where you're competitive, and you've done your research and see that other artists for the same roughly size print that you're working on and that are maybe in your same genre, that puts you in the you use the Goldilocks theory. The Earth exists because of the Goldilocks theory. We are not too far away from the sun. We are not too close to the sun. We are in the just right spot. If we weren't there, we'd dry up or freeze. The same with your art. You want to be in that just right Goldilocks spot. You don't want to be the highest price in your competitive area, and you don't want to be the lowest price. So you need to take that into consideration, and then work backwards from the research that you've done on what's the market bearing today, and dial in some kind of system that allows you to to price the work in a way consistently and regularly. If you can get 4 times or more, go for it.
Yeah, and you got to start somewhere, and so set the pricing, then get it out to market, and let the market give you the feedback the work sells. You can increase the pricing. Now, Colleen has a follow-up question to that, and that question is, she says, my prints are long and narrow, which means that they would need a custom frame. They're sold direct to consumers. How would you present that fact to the customer? Let me take a quick crack at part of it. The how do you present this to customers is you tell them about it. You don't have to say, you don't
Wait a
want
minute,
to
you're
unsell the
complicating it.
work. My work is long and narrow and it's going to be hard for you to frame. That's not what we want to do. But I'm assuming that if they're going to be seeing it on a website, or maybe they're seeing it in person, but wherever it's going to be, list the size of the piece. They'll be able to see what that size is. And then if it's a question of, are you trying to let them know that the piece is sold unframed, just list that right on the website as well. We want to disclose everything that's necessary to disclose, but we don't need to create problems for people that don't even necessarily exist. And I can tell you that, if an art buyer has any experience in the art market, or if they're going to get any experience in the art market, they're going to, they know that framing can sometimes be a bit of a challenge. It's a challenge that can easily be solved by their favorite framer.
Right.
And so I just don't see that as being an issue whatsoever.
Either that, or make the work so it's a gallery wrap and doesn't need to be framed as an option, or potentially give them a source where they can get it framed, or get their own frame. I think a friend of mine has an online store called Easy Frame, letters Easy Float, FLOAT frame.com. I'm pretty sure that's the site where you can order framing and have it send it to you, and then you can assemble it and put your work in it. I may be going out on a limb saying that, but the point there is, find, if you can give them a resource. If you're doing a lot of this, you probably already have a resource. Maybe you hook up a local framer and say, hey, I'm doing something unusual, and I would like to offer framing and some options. Would you be interested in carrying some stock or giving some special prices, or working with me if I recommend you regularly? So, solve the problem for them if possible, without necessarily, like Jason said, making it seem like a problem, but give them a solution to something. It might make the framer happy. Maybe they'll kick back to you. There's all kinds of different possibilities there.
Excellent. Well, we're, again, very quickly running to the end of our time here. Hopefully we can get a few more questions in here. Ruth Collis asks several different questions on, it seems she has the idea that she wants to create an autoresponder system for collectors. And for those of you who don't understand or haven't heard or worked with autoresponders before, it's basically you set up a series of emails that are timed to go out at certain intervals after someone signs up for your mailing list. So it happens automatically. They go to your website, put their email address in, they get a welcome email back, and then at predetermined times that you've set up, every 3 or 4 days or whatever, they're going to get an email from you that gives them some kind of information and potentially an offer. And I'm not going to have a lot of great answers because we're just kind of starting to use autoresponders. I've set up an e-course that runs on autoresponders, but we're also starting to incorporate that in with our collectors and experimenting with it. And I don't have any good definitive answers yet, but I like the idea, Ruth, of thinking of ways that you can set up a system that automatically interacts with your collectors. And the questions that Ruth asked is, what compelling gift could I give to a collector for signing up on my website? What autoresponder series of topics do collectors want to madly hear about and that are compelling? Wouldn't we all like to know that? But basically, the idea is that if you can give people good information that is relevant and helpful to them, that's going to be your most successful, your most successful effort. And so, ask yourself, as an art collector, what would I be interested in? And some of the topics I would think of would include, how to select the right piece of artwork for your space, how to handle artwork, maybe how to negotiate a sale of a piece of artwork. Give them a little bit of a sense of getting an insider's knowledge of the art business and the art process. And that may take some work and experimentation on your part. Ask your current collectors, if you could know anything about the art business, what would you like to know? What would you like to understand? And find out what their questions are, what their curiosities are about, and then write some content around that. That's a good idea. I think I'm going to do that.
Art history, does your art relate to, are you influenced by somebody, and it's obvious that, your Picasso's Cubism interested you? Why did you choose that subject? What influences you? Let it come out of you, your knowledge. You're knowledgeable about a lot of things. And artists, many collectors, they're interested in artists and what they have to say. So just start writing down things that you know about, and then just make a huge list. There's going to be 5 or 10 things that will pop out at you. I love the idea, Ruth, that you're going after this with the autoresponder. I think you're 1 in 1,000 maybe of an artist who would even think about that. As far as gifts, I've repeatedly talked about this company called magcloud.com, magcloud.com. They've been recently bought by blurb.com. Well, that's a place where you can go and get a 20-page portfolio. You upload the PDF pages. They will print it for you, saddle stitch, and return it back to you for about 60, 70 bucks. So, what are you looking at? Under $4 a copy to send to a collector. Now they've got something that's really nice, a presentation that you can be happy with. Note cards are great. You can get those, upload to Fine Art America and get a dozen there, or get them all kinds of other places, Vista Prints probably even. Screensavers, Banksy, the graffiti artist, and Hazel Dooney both did this. They offer high quality res of small size res of some of their images. Hey, download it and print it. I don't care. It's yours. It's open edition. Have fun with it. Just don't share it with other people. Hazel Dooney even said, if you want to send it back to me in a self-addressed envelope, I'll sign it and send it back to you. So you can have a signed piece of art that you printed. It costs you nothing other than basically to make it and make it available. So put your thinking cap on, be creative, and there's all kinds of really cool stuff you can do to create something that's worthwhile to compel somebody to sign up for your subscription list.
Yeah, I love that. I like the idea of, like a screensaver or something like that, where there's nothing physical involved for you, and then it truly does become a fully automated system that you can provide for them. But experiment, set up a variety of different options. I'm assuming, Ruth, that you're maybe going to think about doing some advertising on Google or Facebook. The great thing about that kind of marketing is that it costs you very little to set up a series of different marketing efforts, and you can see which ones perform the best, which one gets you the most sign-ups, and what people respond to. And I'd also encourage you, don't get discouraged if initially the results are not as great as you expected them to be. It's going to take a little bit of a learning curve, and you've got to be persistent to get through that.
Since she's going along the lines of tech, without getting into any specifics, I would look at thinking about an app. Most of the world outside the U.S. already accesses the internet via some kind of portable device, a tablet or a phone. The U.S. is rapidly going toward that. So if you can create an app that works on a tablet or a phone that relates to your art, maybe it's a slideshow or something like that you'll give away as just another way to think about, how do I incorporate technology into what I'm doing.
Perfect. Well, Barney, we've done it again. As the car talk guys say, you've wasted another perfectly good hour. But I hope we've given you some good information. We certainly appreciate your questions and some very thoughtful questions. And I've certainly enjoyed the conversation. And we will plan on being back together here on the second Tuesday of July. For this broadcast. And as always, you can reach out to us. Hopefully you all know how to get a hold of us. I'm on xanadugallery.com or red.blog.com. Barney, yours?
I'm artprintissues.com and barneydavy.com. And if you see that x.co/241 deal, I've been too lazy to take the I'm chastising myself to take the link down. I said I was going to do it May 31st. I haven't gotten around to it. I will by this weekend. So if you're still interested in getting a paperback book and an ebook for the same price, go there and do it now, because I will take it down by this weekend. I've just been too preoccupied to get around to it. But it's going away, so take advantage of that. And thanks for the time, everybody. Appreciate it. And Jason for putting it together. And we'll see you next time.
We'll look forward to seeing you all in the very near future. If you'd like to leave a comment, you can do so on the Google Plus event page that should be in the email announcement that you received about this. And we'll look forward to your feedback and look forward to talking to you all soon. Have a great evening, everyone.
All right. Take care. Peace out.